Welcome back, lit ladies. We're so excited that you guys are here. We're actually going to talk about crying. And this is going to go in different directions, y'all, because we're going to go in different angles here and why we want to embrace, just being able to cry and to be able to release. So, what's coming up for you, ladies, when you hear, the word crying or when you think about your experiences with crying? I feel like that's a good way to go from there. What comes up for you all?
Well, I just cried before this episode. I cried because of frustration and like a self-discovery of something I have to heal now. But I think going with that example, crying, I think is also a sign of something's off, something's wrong, something needs to be looked at, rechecked. So it's a sign that we need to pay attention to something. Or in another way, it's what I will never forget that they told me. Like, I was like, why am I crying? She's like, because you care. And sometimes that just means you care about something so passionately that that's why the tears are there. I feel like growing up, I didn't have a bad concept of crying. So, like, I was allowed to cry, like, it wasn't frowned upon. Unless, of course, you're in trouble and your mom's looking at you like, you better not cry or I'm going to hit you again. Then it's like, okay, don't cry. But I didn't
Yeah.
have too much of that. I just, my mom, she's a crier herself. So it was allowed to be cried. It wasn't frowned upon per se. Yeah,
Mm,
frowned upon. That's what it is. It wasn't frowned upon versus other people that I have met where it's like, oh, why are you crying? Like, suck it up. Or like, oh, that's
yeah.
nothing. Why are you crying? So for me, I don't have trouble crying. I like crying. Like I said, it's a sign that something needs attention. And then it's just a matter of me figuring out what that attention needs.
I
No,
also
I like
love crying.
Mhm.
that.
But I did grow up in a household where I was not allowed to cry. I still cried, but it was frowned upon. It was not I wasn't allowed to feel feelings other than
Mm,
happy. And I did, I think, have a hard time crying maybe in like, I don't know, I want to say like my early like college years. I think I had a hard time crying. I remember I had a therapist a long time ago and she reminded me that crying is one of like the most beautiful things that a human could do. And I don't think she said it in that way, but the way that she said it, it just made me feel like, yeah, crying is beautiful. And crying happens, we're gonna get scientific. Crying happens because it's a biological response, it's a
mhm.
physiological response, and we cry to release energy. And so we
Yeah.
cry whenever we feel a strong emotion. And so you can cry whenever you feel any emotion. And so I cry all of the time. I think I said this before in another episode. I cry at least once every day because I feel very deeply and I feel happiness very deeply. I cry when I am laughing. I cry when I see something so beautiful. Like, I don't know, I love kindness, I love love, I love, those like sweet moments. I will be that person crying. I cry literally there are so many moments that I cry and Marcin is so used to it now. He's like, "Oh, I'm crying again." Like,
Yeah.
tissue or whatever it is because like I
That's
literally
cute.
cry over everything, but it obviously is a lot harder when you're crying for a hard emotion. Like
Yeah.
super transparent. I cried my eyes out yesterday because yesterday was not a good day. And that didn't feel good to cry, but I still let myself cry because it was just part of like what I needed to do. And it was like ugly tears. It wasn't like those sweet, like one tear. It was like
Yeah.
I was
Ugly cry.
sobbing. I was like
Yeah.
sobbing.
Uh-huh.
Aw.
And, but you know what? Sometimes oh, actually a good something side note, something important that everyone should know is that when we cry and we have, like, those, like, really hard tears, and then sometimes you have a headache after you cry, that's because your sodium levels go down, and so,
Mm,
it's important to hydrate after you cry, right? Because
Yeah.
think about your tears and how salty they are, right?
Yeah.
So your sodium levels drop. And so remember to just replenish your nutrients after you cry. So that's definitely what I did yesterday. After I sobbed, I had a huge headache. And then, I just like hydrated and made sure that I had like a lot of salt. Salt isn't bad. We need sodium. So yeah, just to kind of like replenish those nutrients. Side note, the more you know, right?
You know?
No, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's why I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, no. I love that you brought that in. And it's really interesting to hear all of our experiences because it's very different with crying. So for me, my mom welcomed crying. There was never shame if you cried. I somehow developed that crying was not okay because crying was for the weak. And I only say that because, and I share this very vulnerably, because I grew up seeing my mom cry so much. And I think this is childhood trauma, honestly, where she got hurt a lot, and I personally would see my mom. And although I know she's the strongest woman ever, part of me was like, I don't want to feel deeply like that. I don't want to look weak like that because people will pick on me and they will hurt me. And I'm not going to let people hurt me. I will be the strong one. That I developed very early on. I can say this, like it started at the age of 6, straight up. So I would never cry. And if I did, I would hide myself in my room, in my corner. And the only person that really saw me cry like that, if we were one-to-one, was my mom and my brother. I never cried in front of anybody else. Didn't happen until somehow, like in this
With us.
current journey that I'm in, exactly, in this current journey, I feel like in the past 2 years, I'm embracing it. But this past couple of months has really been the moment for me to embrace crying and embrace vulnerability, because crying is part of being vulnerable. And I don't know, there's something about when I see people cry, like I have so much empathy, but I feel like you're seeing someone completely naked at that point when they're crying and they're in that like sobbing point. And sometimes for me, it is really hard to know what to do when people are in that. And especially for myself, like, what do I do when I'm crying hysterically and I can't control it because it's of a deep emotion? It's
Mhm.
very uncomfortable for me. So this journey has been more about learning that it's okay to cry because it's a release. And crying doesn't necessarily mean that it's because of all the heavy emotions. It could also be through the joyful moments, the beautiful moments that you get to experience, and allowing yourself to do that because it shows that you're feeling very deeply. It's just, for me, I did not wear that as like a badge of honor. For me, I was like, nope, I'm not going to let anyone hurt me. I don't care. And I'm not going to let them see one tear come down. I was like, never. But if I had to do it on my own, that was okay. It felt safe enough to do so. But now I feel like I've embraced it more. I love it more. Like, I just went to California, celebrating my birthday out there with my friends. And literally, as I was on the plane, I saw the plane take off, like, and I saw the view of Sacramento because that's where I was at when I flew out. I did cry. I sobbed, but it was out of happiness because I was like, I
Mhm.
felt so grateful and so happy. And I just allowed it to happen. And the guy next to me was like, are you okay? Do you need anything? I'm like, I'm okay. I was
Oh.
like, I'm just really, really happy. So he was just like, okay. But it's been a journey though with my relationship with crying because again, it just feels very naked, feels
Mm.
very vulnerable, feels very raw. So, yeah, that's kind of my journey, honestly, in a quick turnaround. But I feel like it's really interesting to hear each one of us because it's so different. And again, like, I love that it's different because I hopefully when our listeners are hearing this, your story may be different or you might resonate with like TATI, Lupe, or myself. I kind of just want to remind people, like, I think this is a beautiful thing to talk about too, because I don't think I've really, honestly, besides this episode, I don't think I've ever heard anybody else talk about crying ever.
You know what's interesting? I feel like part of the reason why I had a hard time crying in the past was because not because I had a hard time crying, but because I felt like I couldn't do it in front of other people because other people couldn't handle it. And
Mm,
through healing and stuff, like I've learned that like if somebody is uncomfortable, I think like my experiences have
yeah.
always been that people have been so uncomfortable with me crying. And so like they want to like shut it down. And not just like my parents growing up, but also just like friends who were like, they just like didn't know what to do with the emotion, right? And then they felt uncomfortable. And so I, to not make other people uncomfortable, just would hold it in and then would cry on my own. But now I feel like I'm going to feel my emotions and I'm going to cry and I'm going to just allow them to like drip down my cheeks because I don't need to wipe them away with a tissue. And if another person feels uncomfortable with my emotion, that's a them thing. Right?
Mhm.
Sort of like I'm not saying that that person who was checking in on you on the plane felt
Mhm.
uncomfortable, right? But like an example of,
Yeah.
when people see you, they just like want to like make it better or like want you to stop. And it's like, no, I just like these are my feelings and like I get to cry and how beautiful
Yeah.
I get to feel those tears on my cheeks. Like fun fact, I never use a tissue because I want to feel the tears on my cheeks. And
Mm.
I think that this is something that I actually, help my clients with, especially when I notice that they're like wiping their tears all of the time with a tissue. I'm like, what would happen if you just felt the tear on your cheek? Right. And it just
Mhm.
helps you be more present with that feeling of like whatever it is you're experiencing because you don't have to wipe away your tears. They're allowed to be there, right? Just like the
It
crying is allowed to be there, the emotions
Yeah.
to be there.
It's funny that you said
Mhm.
that because that's exactly what I did yesterday. Yeah. And typically I know I feel deeply is when like I know this sounds silly, but when both my eyes are, creating the tears cuz typically like this is strange. I don't know if it connects or anything. Maybe Tati you could tell us, but when I would cry by myself, it was really hard sometimes to get the tears out. So then it started off with only one eye would produce the tears. Yeah, it was weird. It was like the weirdest thing. And as I've gone through my evolution with it, it's now both. And it's really interesting to see that evolution for myself because I'm like, man, like from not going and crying to them being like, okay, I feel it in one eye, I must care. And then to like seeing both and experiencing both at the same time, I'm like, it is, like you said, you do connect with it. And I think that I feel people like would embrace that more if, like you said, society embraced it more as
Mhm.
well. Because I think that naturally, like even for myself, when I see someone cry, although it makes me uncomfortable, the first response I have is like, I want to help you. Like, how can I help you so you could feel better? Without realizing that sometimes we do have, in order for us to help other people, we have to allow them to feel. Because, like, we just don't know what people are going through and we don't know the experience. Or, like, or what about, if they're experiencing a joyful moment and they're in the moment and then you're in there, like, can I help you? Can I, like, make sure that you don't cry anymore? Or, hey, it's making me uncomfortable. You kind of block someone from experiencing that completely. But where I'm going with that is like, man, like how can we embrace like a crying culture? I don't want to call it crying culture, but like maybe like embracing
Like
crying
that.
as a norm. Yeah, because I'm like,
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, like you said. It could just be like what you just said, Tati, like being able to connect with the feelings, the emotions that are coming up as you're crying. So how do you guys think we can like, I don't know, embrace that more and maybe allow more women to do that too? Because then I thought about how you said also, Tati, like when someone cries, we automatically assume like their emotions are too much for some people, right? So how can we, because, and again, there's a correlation to that too, because when women cry or feel very deeply, it feels like too much. So how do we take away the whole notion of, man, you're crying, you're feeling or you're experiencing like heavy emotions, that's too much. Like calmate, like calm down. Get it together, woman, or whatever, right? But sometimes like we do grow up in environments like that. So like how do we shift it to being like, you know what? No, it's like it's actually more than okay for you to cry. Like let's embrace it more. Yeah, like
I
how
think
do you guys think we could do that?
I think you just become the trendsetter. Like, I don't know if that's just where my rebellious break the rules side,
Hey,
but
I think
listen,
so.
you just show people how it's done.
I was thinking the same thing, Lupe. I was literally thinking the same thing. I wasn't going to use the word trendsetter. I was going to use the word role model. Like, not role model, but, like, you model,
Yeah.
like and I feel like it's a domino effect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you show people that you're okay with your emotions, right, then you kind of provide, like, a safe place for other people to show their emotions, and they're like, "Oh, wow, they might not think this, but unconsciously, they might think like, "Oh, they're feeling their feelings. I think I can feel my feelings," right?
Mhm.
And it just
Yeah.
I have a perfect example because, and I hope he doesn't kill me for sharing this, but my fiance, he started one time crying, and I was like, there was no reason to cry. And he's like, and I saw the tears, and I'm like, why are you crying? What happened? And he's like, I'm just happy. And I was like, what? I was so confused,
Oh.
honestly, because I don't think I've ever really experienced like happy tears. Like
Mm.
maybe like a couple of times, handful of times, but never like out of the blue. Like I've cried at weddings, right? Like I know I'm probably gonna cry, right? So like you expect that, but someone who's just sitting there and like taking it all in and just starts crying, I'm like, what's wrong with you? And but going back to your point, like because I saw that from him, event like now I cry too, like out of nowhere, where I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I love us, I love what we've created, and I just start crying, and he's like, oh no, now it's
Oh,
your turn.
that's sweet.
But I didn't get comfortable with the tears of crying for happiness out of nowhere until he taught me that. And again, you just become the roboto, I guess, the trendsetter.
Also, thank you for sharing that because men
Yeah.
cry too.
Oh, yeah.
And it's
Yes.
important for people to know. I feel like our audience is mostly women, but like if there are any men out there listening to us, men
Yes.
cry too, right?
Yes.
And and I think that men need those spaces where they
100%.
feel enough safety or, feel comfortable enough to cry.
Or
Yeah.
like Edie's like how she felt where tears were weak sign of weakness. As a woman, I could have took that as, oh my God, why are you being like a weakly, like stop crying, like, right? But I accepted his emotions, and I was like, if anything, I felt more for him because I was like, oh my God, you're not afraid to show your tears, which isn't what I had at home because my dad never cried. My mom was always a crier. So with him, it was like a different perspective, and I was like, oh, and I can 100% guarantee he is not a weak person, but
Oh, no. Yeah.
but he like I was like, oh my God, like this is a different experience to see a man cry like that. Sometimes to me even shows like they're not afraid to show who they are, and
100%.
I think that's the importance behind crying too, of like you're not afraid to show those emotions.
And that they're not psychopaths. Like, literally though, like, actually, you know,
Oh my gosh.
if
No,
you
it's true.
if you have empathy, if you can, like, access emotion, you're not a psychopath. That, makes us feel safe.
100%. No, it's true. 100%. But it's funny because as you guys mentioned that, I feel not resistance, but there might be an audience out there that probably is like, but yo, I grew up with maybe seeing a mom cry, maybe my dad cried, and it still makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't really want to cry because I mean, I also grew up with an example of seeing my mom being very welcoming with crying. And if anything, she really encouraged us to. I was not all about it though. And I actually feel like I saw enough people in my life who did cry and stuff, but I put that, I guess, wall up. And how would you guys maybe help someone who's navigating this journey where want to embrace the crying, they want to release, but they still have a really hard time with it? Because I think that even though we see it, right? Sometimes it is really hard to be like, but can I do it though? Like, how do I really tune in with my body and tune in with what I'm feeling so I can actually release it, because I can even think about back to, man, 15-year-old Edie's where I wanted to cry so bad, but I would like hold it. And instead of channeling that like feeling of sadness or whatever not, I would channel like maybe just being like, I'm not gonna cry. Like try me, but I'm not gonna do it. Like I would channel something completely different. So then I would block the emotion and then be like, all right, now it's swept under the rug. We're not gonna cry. Yeah. Like we're gonna keep it moving. And that sounds very hardcore, but that was a version of me back then that just did not want to cry. I did not like it. And I think that women too, just like as men, can be in that element depending on where they're at. But like, how would you guide someone to be able to be like, you know what, like it's still okay for you to cry, even though you feel this way?
I have a question. Did you feel anything in your body when you didn't cry? Any like
Oh, that's a good
after
one.
effects for not crying?
I in the moment, because I remember because sometimes I have tendencies now to do the same thing I did back then, depending on how heavy the emotion is. I definitely get really hot. I feel the burning sensations in like my chest, and because I'm lighter skin, I do. Well, now I turn a different color, but back then I just felt like it was really, really hot. And then I would choke up because obviously I wanted to cry, but to be like, and then I would stand up straight because then in order for me not to be like, oh, they got me, I would stand up even more straight and be like, nah. Like I would get sassier. That's what it was. I would get really sassy. So then I think a lot of that sadness and deep feelings of like whatever it is that I wanted to cry about would become anger. I don't like saying it, but it was anger. So like the result would be like because I held it in, I would create, or resentment and anger would accumulate over time. I think that's what it was because I was holding it in, right? Like kind of like a volcano where it's like ready to erupt. She's getting there and there's more added stuff and then eventually she's like she's over it. So I feel like that is the result of me not crying or releasing my emotions in the moment cuz yeah, there were many times where I became very explosive if I couldn't hold it in anymore because I didn't cry.
So now, did you like that feeling?
I mean, no, I didn't like it.
So this is, and I'm saying this because at some point I think I went through the same thing where I was like, as a little girl, I was like, no, they're not going to see me cry, right? But I
Yeah.
remember feeling the same sensations as you and hated that feeling.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, what happens if I just cry? And
Yeah.
so I counterintuitive, I guess, like
Yeah.
think of it oppositely. If I
Mhm.
don't cry, I'm going to feel this nasty feeling
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
don't like it. So why not just cry? It's almost like choose your poison type thing, right? Like, do you want to just be quote unquote embarrassed because you have tears shedding and but you have relief? Or do you want to avoid crying and the embarrassment, quote unquote, but this nasty sensation in in your like throat, in your belly, in your body? I don't
Yeah.
wanna feel that, and I don't wanna explode afterwards. Because then I did pick up on it where I was like, I was just exploding, and nobody understood why, like, "Oh my god, what's wrong with you?" Like, this is why they were like, "I cannot deal with you sometimes," as a little girl, and but it was because of that, because I was holding things in.
Mhm.
But I guess in turn, like,
Yeah.
what are the consequences of you not crying and like weighing it out? And I personally didn't like the feeling of not crying because that just didn't make me feel good. So at that point, I was just like, fine, I'll just cry.
No, that no, it
Just
makes a
be
lot
done.
of sense. No, but that's a good one. I feel like that is a good way to also look at it, right? Of being able to look at I don't want to say consequence, but just looking at the results of what can be created if you hold on to those emotions and don't release it properly. Because that's been definitely my lesson throughout the years where I'm like, I carried so much to where it became very explosive to then where I felt I was the other spectrum where I felt very deeply and I didn't know why I was feeling the way that I was. But I think that even for the listener that's out there, that really helped me to be able to navigate this journey of crying and being able to have more acceptance towards it and to befriend it is redefining it. Because for me, I always said, like, crying is weakness. I don't want people to see me to be weak. I don't want to be hurt. And redefining of like, okay, obviously that's a deep wound, right? Because like I don't want to be hurt. I don't want people to, it's not the crying of the action, it's just the whole part of like being seen in such a vulnerable spot. And that was very scary for me because I'm like, anybody can abuse that when they see me in this like vulnerable state, this raw state. Like, what are they going to do with me? But I had to redefine that weakness is not, or crying is not weakness. Crying is actually strength. It's actually courage, right? And also allowing myself to embrace vulnerability. I don't think I had enough room to be vulnerable or I didn't give myself space, I should say, to be vulnerable. Because I was afraid of the deep emotions. I was afraid to feel deeply. And I think acknowledging that as you're going through it is going to help you so that way you can find whatever that redefining moment is for you instead of crying is weakness or crying is only for certain types of people or crying is whatever, right? Like whatever that thing is for you where it's not allowing you to actually partake into it or blocking the access to crying. Like I think it's important to redefine it. And that yeah, vulnerability is a beautiful thing as you allow yourself to experience it more and more because that allows deeper connection. It allows for people to really see you on the other side, but obviously it takes time. So for the listener that's out there, I feel like Lupe brings up a good point of like really thinking about the results of it. Like, what are the long term results? And do you really want to sit in that? Like, for me, obviously, at some point, I turned it around because it was no longer sustainable for me to be that way. It was actually affecting me in my mental health, my well being. Like, it just wasn't good for me. And even in the way I was showing up in relationships, it all has a domino effect of how you do that, right? And then redefining it for yourself too, like pinpointing, like, what is it that is what's that word that's blocking me from allowing myself to actually like access that thing. I think that really changes it and then embracing the vulnerability part of it because yo, crying is like a form of being fully naked and letting people see you in your most rawest moment. And yeah, it can be really hard, but I guess giving yourself time and grace. That's something that came up for me for whoever is there. But Tati, do you have anything to add on? Because like I feel like you got something there.
Something brewing.
Yes.
So, going back to what you were saying, like, what if someone wants to cry, but like it just isn't happening? Like they want to do it, but
Hmm.
they just can't seem to get it. Right? Like I would just say to stop focusing on the crying. The crying will happen naturally when your body feels safe. That's just how tears work.
That's another one.
Right? Like when your body feels safe enough to release that energy, it will release in the form of tears or in another form. And so even if you don't cry, that's okay too, right? Your body can release in another form, but don't focus so much on wanting to cry, right? Focus on the body and the sensations inside. And
Mm.
once your body again feels safe, it will naturally flow, right? And then if there's someone out there hearing this and they're saying, but I don't want to feel my emotion. I don't want to even be with the body or the sensation, right? Also, just remembering that emotions are just energy, right?
Mhm.
They're just energy. And I always like to like remind people of like emotion, right? Like energy in motion, right? That's the emotion, right? It's just energy that needs to flow in and out. And that's all an emotion is, right?
Yeah.
The mind is what puts the narrative and the label to it, but the emotion itself is just energy. And if we can just be with that energy, then we'll allow the energy to flow through the body and out of the body through tears naturally without forcing it. So don't ever force yourself to cry if like you really can't cry, but you want to. Just allow yourself to be present and be with the sensations.
It reminded me as you said that. Have you guys seen the movie The Holiday with Cameron Diaz, where she's trying to find love and then she's like trying to force herself to cry? She's like, ah, and then at the
Yes.
very end she does it. Yeah. But I mean, but that's such a good example of that. Like she tried to force it in the very beginning because she wanted to feel that, but because she couldn't, she was like, something's wrong with me. Until the very end when she allowed herself, like you said, like that, even though they don't talk about it in the movie, but I can see it in that form, in that moment of that scene where she's allowing that energy to go in and out and flow in her body the way it needs to, which allowed her to then release and cry and connect, like, oh my gosh, like this is what I wanted to feel this whole time. So kind of reminded me of that. I know it was like so silly, but I was like, oh my gosh, Cameron Diaz. So
Um, I have a question. Now that I cry because of happiness as well, my biggest concern, did y'all cry at your wedding?
uh, did I cry? Hold on. I'm trying.
Both of you looking up
Oh,
like what?
I cried when I danced with my mom.
Oh.
Yeah, I was dancing with my mom, but I don't think I was so happy at my wedding. Like when it yeah, no, I was so happy, but I cried when I was dancing with my mom because, typically the bride dances with their dad. I didn't get to have that, but my mom has been such a big rock in my life. So when she played, because I didn't have any idea of what song she chose for our mother and daughter dance, and when I heard the lyrics, I knew which one it was, and it just made me cry a lot. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's the
I
only
don't
time
think
I
I
cried.
cried at my wedding, but I think it was more of like I was kind of like overwhelmed with everything that was happening. There were like the people walking in front of everyone. I think I was just like overwhelmed that I wasn't like fully in my body.
Yeah.
Also, that was a time I got married when I was 26, so I had not gone through any nervous system healing at that point. So I was definitely not in my body.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so scared. I'm like, I don't want to ruin my makeup. We already know that Paul is going to cry when he sees me walk down the aisle. So I know if I see him crying,
Oh,
I'm probably gonna cry. So now I'm like, oh my God, I can't look at you. But who knows what happens that day, right? But yeah,
waterproof makeup.
I was
I
just gonna say,
know.
or you just get someone to tap it. I mean,
Yep.
that was what my sister did because she was ready. She had like a little kit and everything just in case, and even then, she didn't touch up my makeup afterwards, so it's fine.
So funny. Cool, cool. Good to know. Good to
Yeah,
know. Mhm.
no. But is there anything else, ladies, that comes up when you guys think about that? Because that was for me where I was thinking about, let me ask about that question, because I know that there are going to be people out there that, either one, embrace all of the crying and they're like, yes, like let the water just come down my cheeks, and whether it's happy or sad or whatever emotions. But then there's other people who have a hard time, right? And it's not as easy, or we've been modeled it and it's been welcome in our homes, but yet we find this resistance where we're like, why can't we cry? Like, what's wrong with me? And I hate thinking that, right? Because there's nothing wrong with you, by the way. It's just more about like, how do we navigate that and how do we welcome it? That's why we're here. But is there
Mhm.
anything else that you guys feel that, especially because both of you guys embrace it so much? So, like, I guess for me, yeah, like, I know you guys have touched upon why you embrace it, but like actually, yeah, Tati, you growing up in a household where it wasn't welcome, what was your turning point where you were like, nah, like besides the therapist like session, or like the therapy session you had where you were like, okay, crying is beautiful. It's actually a good thing. Was there anything maybe for you or Lupe where it was a pivotal moment where you're like, no, like crying is actually like a way of life. Like it actually makes me feel so much better. Like it's allowed me to live my life differently. Like, is there anything else that you guys probably saw that has allowed you to embrace it and hug it more to where you guys enjoy it? Because you guys share it so like, like so great, and
Thanks.
yeah.
I
Is there
think
any
for me, so my parents were definitely not very emotionally expressive. My mom did not cry at all. But I was kind of one of those kids where like if you told me not to do something, I would do it even more to piss you off. So if you told me not to cry, I would cry louder. I was like very like, pushing the boundaries and the limits. It's so weird. I feel like I've always been like a wise child. It's so weird because like as a kid, I always felt like I was allowed to cry. Like there was something like in me that like I knew I was allowed to cry and like nobody was gonna take that away from me. Obviously, I didn't have that language, that narrative, but like it was almost like a feeling of like, no, you're not gonna
Mhm.
tell me not to cry or not to do this kind of thing. But it was more again going back to like what I was saying earlier about like as I got older, I didn't want to cry to like make people uncomfortable. And like I didn't want people to be like, oh my God, like are you okay?
Yeah.
Or like trying to like fix it. But I think like when that therapist, I think that was the turning point for me. Like when that therapist was like, crying is like the most beautiful thing that a human
Mhm.
can do. It felt there was something about those words that just, like, felt so validating, and I felt so seen. I always had that knowing of, like, "Yes, I am allowed to cry." So kind of
Mhm.
hearing someone say that back to me and saying that it was the most beautiful thing made me want to embrace it even more of, like, "You're
Mhm.
right. It is a beautiful thing." Like, when you see someone cry going back to what you were saying, Edie, is, like, crying really, like, opens you up. You are exposed, you are vulnerable, and when someone can see that, it's so beautiful. Like, when I get
Mhm.
the opportunity to see someone in their rawness, that's a privilege. On
Mhm.
my like, it's a privilege to see someone so
Mhm.
raw and open, and, like, I do believe that it is the most beautiful thing, and so, like, I think those words that she shared with me, like, touched me so much. I felt so validated, I felt so seen, and I feel like I'm tearing up even just, like, saying that right now, like,
Mhm.
I, like, feel that so deeply of, like, yeah, and I think, like, that helped me, like, embrace those tears
Mhm.
a little bit more.
No, I love that. That is so good. I thank you for diving even deeper on that and giving more context to that, because I definitely felt it. I feel like for the listener that's out there who's already embracing it or wherever your journey is at, I feel like that resonates a lot because you're right. What a privilege it is to see someone in that raw, vulnerable, unfiltered space. Like that's a privilege. And I think that sometimes we as a society have taken, I don't know, it's not taken advantage of, but we haven't placed a lot of importance into that. And I think that that is so sad because we typically, it is kind of sad because I'm like, think about it. Like, if so many of us were given the culture for men and women to be okay to express, to feel their emotions deeply, and be able to be in spaces where you can cry, release, and do it with a group of people, I feel like more people would be feeling more healed. Like more people would feel more seen and accepted, whether you're a man or a woman or whatever you might identify as, right? Like it allows us to be more connected because, like you said, like that key word, what a privilege it is to see you in that space. And on the other side, for me, right, when I was younger, because I saw, my mom go through the things that she went through and, she was taking advantage when she was in that vulnerable spot. I feel like that's why I created that like shield because I was like, I don't want people to see me like that. But when you flip it and you're like, no, like, but if we started normalizing it, if we started taking care of that and nurturing even that when people are in that space, it is actually a privilege. It is a beautiful thing that we get to experience. It just goes back to culture and society because it's deemed it as like a weak thing or men don't cry. Like it goes different spectrums, right, for men and women and for anybody else out there, right, depending on culture or whatever. We haven't allowed people to view it in that way, and I think that's very unfortunate. But I love the way you phrased that. Like what a privilege. I think it keeps standing out to me, like what a privilege it is to see you in that space, right? And again, like for the listeners that are out there, like please, like if you're experiencing that, right, and you see someone and it makes you feel uncomfortable, right, we want to welcome you to remember those words, like what a privilege it is to see that person in that space.
Mhm.
Because don't rob people from feeling deeply or interrupt or anything, right? Like hold space, wait, and like allow them to feel and then go in and ask like what they need, right? I feel like that's important because when we look at it in that lens of like what a privilege it is to see someone in that space, I don't know, it makes you walk and act in it differently. So when you shared that, I was like, wow, you're right. What a privilege. Yeah. I don't know. That stood out to me right now.
What a privilege it is that person feels comfortable enough to do that in front of you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is, that once we start changing the narrative for ourselves and accepting it,
Mm-hmm.
then it's also okay to be open to it when somebody else is crying too. I think
Mm-hmm.
for me it was just that. Like I always knew like I could cry, whatever. But it was more so like, oh, now I can share this so that that person can understand me. And obviously that happened as I got older because I was more like wiser on like why I was crying, what was happening
Mm-hmm.
to me, my trauma or whatever. And it just continues to grow where I continue to evolve the why I'm crying. Like earlier today I said I think these tears are just a sign that something needs attention, and I figured out that what the attention is, where the attention is needed. But I think as I get older, it's also like I'm surrounded by people who are comfortable with crying. Like Tati, my boss, she cries for anything and she's hilarious. But now I have this even more of a different context around crying, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, everyone does it. I can do it too. My fiance who cries just because he's happy, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And so I think with time I've learned to just accept it even more than what I
Mm,
had in the past. So that's what's
that's
made me
powerful.
even more comfortable. And even today, hearing Tati say she cries every day, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna keep track too, because maybe I should be crying every day.
There's no shoulds, there's no shoulds.
You're
But I
too
do
funny.
I have a tip for anyone who feels that knot in their throat and they just can't get rid of it and they can't seem to cry. So if you feel that knot in your throat, just begin to slowly invite movement into your jaw, up and down, side to side. That's going to activate your parasympathetic nervous system and it's going to release some tension here and make you yawn.
Mm,
Good.
Yeah.
yeah.
Good. Something's working in there. And naturally, it's going to help that tension in your throat, but it could, no guarantees, it could naturally help you release tears. So just
Mm.
if you feel that, that's something that you can try.
I like that. That's a good tip. That's a really good one, actually. Yeah. No, ladies, that was really, really good. I feel like it definitely gives people a different lens of like where, our crying stories can take place. Cause again, all of ours was so different. And I think that even just being able to, yes, incorporate that tip for those of us who may not be able to cry as easily or have some resistance on that, like, go, please try it out and let us know if it's helped you or supported you. But in the meantime, too, just reminding ourselves that it does take time, right? For those of us who still need to embrace that or incorporate that in our journey. Like, it takes time and that's okay. And to also just remember, like, it is a beautiful thing, right? I love the way you said that, Tati. Like, what a privilege it is to be able to see you be in that space. And I hope that as you navigate life, as you go through different seasons, as you meet different people who might be able to model that for you, like how Lupe said, right? And help you embrace it and accept it more, right? I hope it allows you as the listener to connect with yourself even more deeply. That as you cry, as you accept, as you show up vulnerably, and you allow other people to see you in that way, or even for yourself, if you're experiencing for the first time, like, allow yourself to deeply connect to your feelings. Like, that is a gift. And I feel like because I've been in that journey, like, I feel like that has been something that I have totally been grateful for, with that vulnerability slash crying experience. So I hope that everybody gets to experience that. And I hope that you really take that in your journey, and that this, episode supports you with that as well. But is there
Don't
any
forget.
final words, ladies?
Yes, don't forget to replenish your nutrients after you cry.
Yes. Yes, that was a good one. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, that was good. And last thing, don't be afraid to cry even more during your period. Don't think that that's a bad thing. We're actually more intuitive during our period. So if those tears fall, it's okay.
Yes. And I mean, crying is part of the surrendering journey because you allow yourself to go into the unknown, the vulnerable, but that is actually part of the duality in life. So, and allow yourself to embrace it all. But until next time, ladies, again, if you guys felt that this episode served you, if you guys have any comments or want to share on what your journey is like with this whole experience on crying and embracing it, let us know in the comments. And if there's any special shout outs too, we want to celebrate you. We still haven't forgotten about that. So please go ahead and put that on the comments on either YouTube or Spotify. And then remember to just stay lit, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us today on LUPE Podcast. We hope this conversation has ignited a spark within you so that you keep embracing your journey.
Remember, transformation takes time, but every step brings you closer to the life you're meant to live. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and leave a review.
Let's continue this journey together. Until next time, stay lit and keep transforming.